I don't think we should be focusing on Loki. That guy's brain is a bag full of cats. You could smell crazy on him.
Have care how you speak. Loki is beyond reason, but he is of Asgard. And he is my brother.
He killed 80 people in 2 days.
He's adopted.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It's time to review the final episode of Loki, Season 1 on Disney+. It was confirmed that we are getting a Season 2. That's kind of one of the issues I have with just this entire season. The way that it ends, it feels like it's just a cliffhanger for the second season, and there's not a lot of real satisfying conclusions to the story, in my opinion. Here to talk with me about that is my good friend Aaron Sparrow, comic book writer, editor. I know you had a more positive outlook of Loki as a whole heading into this final episode. What are your thoughts?
Well, I thought the last episode was interesting. It was an episode that I wish had been the whole show. But obviously we're getting a slow burn because we are getting a season 2. I was actually both simultaneously slightly disappointed and excited that we're getting a season 2, because going into this, I thought to myself, there's no way they can wrap this up in a satisfying fashion, all these plot threads in one episode. And they didn't wrap it up, which is, the unsatisfying part. But the nice part is it does set up some things that look like it's going to pay off in the future MCU movies and in season 2 of Loki. So I'm hopeful that we're going in kind of like an exciting direction, because the idea of opening up the multiverse and having various versions of Kang the Conqueror is interesting to me. And after the 1-2 punch of Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Black Widow, I was feeling like the MCU's time was done, and Endgame really was the end. But this kind of opens up some things that give me some hope for the future.
So you brought up the actor that portrays Kang in this final issue, Jonathan Majors. We finally get him introduced to the MCU. Now, this isn't going to be the Kang that we get as we move on, obviously, with what happened to the character. But the portrayal was interesting. I didn't find anything boring about the character. I think he was chewing up the screen, the actor himself.
Definitely was.
But it definitely fit into my two of my biggest complaints. I felt like I rewatched the ending to two sci-fi movies I was excited for that had some of the worst endings in movie history, in my opinion. The first one being The Matrix Reloaded. We basically got the Architect again, except he wasn't dry and boring, but it was just him talking a lot and explaining a lot. And then you're like, can we do something interesting?
Well, we don't have the budget to do something interesting anymore. In the last 2 episodes, they spent everything on the CG
on the cloud
for the last 2. Yeah. But I think that's the limitation of what they're doing here. And in the movie, we probably would have gotten that exposition over him bouncing around through time and showing them different things. If you remember the Silver Surfer story where Thanos came back and was showing Surfer the different planets. They were jumping kind of like from world to world as he was explaining what his plan was going to be. I think we would have got something that was more visually interesting and compelling like that, in between Sylvie and Loki trying to kill him. That would have been more exciting. But instead, this is a Kate Herron directed show with a budget, so they're going to sit in chairs and they're going to have a conversation. I think the thing that saved it for me was the fact that the actor was so compelling. I was riveted by his performance. It was a little bit goofy, a little bit chewing the scenery, but still like had a certain air of menace that I thought came through. So I was very satisfied with his performance as this version of Kang. A very different.
Oh, yeah. It's almost like Dennis Hopper when you watch Waterworld. He's doing the best he can. He knows what he's in for, and he's making it as exciting as possible. And I will give the actor props for that. He certainly made it. It was not as dry as what we saw in The Matrix Reloaded, even though it's essentially the same scene. Which when I remember when I left that movie feeling very down, I was like, my goodness, that's what you got. And Loki even says it during the scene. That's what this is, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I appreciated Loki being my point of view character, being like, yeah, that's the big reveal. And then the very last scene, we got a replay of Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes.
Oh, we definitely did. We definitely did get that. But I thought it was effective. I mean, it didn't evoke that memory in me. I didn't think of it until you said it. But yeah, it definitely smacks of that. But I liked it. I liked it better in this.
Loki has been pushed back into a different multiverse.
Yeah, it's that was the thing that was interesting to me. Is that at first I was like, wait a minute. So did everybody's mind get wiped? And then I was like, oh no, he's just bounced back. He's been pushed into another timeline, and who knows what timeline this is? Maybe this is the Kang the Conqueror timeline, and we're going to get some really interesting.
When we saw that statue, and now that was Kang that was up there instead of the timekeeper robot guys, I was like, I remember seeing Abraham Lincoln. I remember this scene. It's still disappointing. Obviously, it was more effective with you.
Well, here it makes sense. In the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes, it makes no sense whatsoever. So at least they did
that. They did tie it in better.
I
But
remember the
there's so
entire
much-
theater in Planet of the Apes going, "What the?"
Yeah. Well, the first time you do that is when Marky Mark has the opportunity to one final kiss with the really attractive, like, mute woman, but he decides to opt out and kiss Helena Bonham Carter's, like, ape lady, and you're like, nah, I don't see that happening. Nah. It's almost as uncomfortable as when the lady in Predator versus Alien, it looks like she's about to make out with the Predator. Remember that?
Yeah, he's he was subverting expectations. Mark Wahlberg was like, hey, I'm going to subvert expectations. Say hello to your mother for me.
So kind of getting back, I'm sorry I went on a little movie rant there. So both of those scenes evoke memories of the endings of sci-fi movies that I absolutely hated the endings of. The Matrix Reloaded and Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. There's so many things that didn't happen that I wanted to see before the end of this. We never even got to see Mobius on a damn jet ski. What the hell?
Well, you got to come back for season 2. Come on, they can't give you everything all at once.
You can't leave me with blue balls like this, Aaron. You gotta deliver something.
I'm sure in his life, we get to see his life. He will be a jet ski instructor, among other things throughout the timeline. I mean, this opens up a lot of possibilities, and the reason that I liked it is it's probably not fair because it's not judging it based on the show itself. It's judging it on the possibilities of what could happen. So I'm looking at the multiverse just kind of like branching out in all these chaotic ways. And, the idea that, that Kang's last line in this is really good when Sylvie stabs him through the chest is he gives her a wink and he says, "See you soon," indicating that, the bad Kangs that he's been holding back are coming. And the reason I got excited for that is I thought to myself, well, this sets up Fantastic Four nicely if they do it right, because the problem with the Fantastic Four movies of the past, and there are many, but the main problem is kind of what they set out from the beginning with a misconception of what a Fantastic Four movie should be, which is they always set it up as a superhero film, and really it should be a film about a group of explorers who just happen to be superheroes. So I think that if you can open up the multiverse that way, you can introduce the Fantastic Four in a really interesting way, and that's what got me excited about this episode more than the episode itself.
You can do that. The reason you haven't seen the Fantastic Four in the MCU so far is because they were in another multiverse.
Yeah.
Now you can introduce them. The reason you haven't seen mutants or the X-Men team, maybe they're in another multiverse and they got to come back and do some things. There's a lot of opportunities here to,
maybe they were in our original timeline and they were pruned out of it, and now it's all going to be restored.
Yeah. But there's also some other issues here. I don't think that I think you're so happy that you got an ending with endless possibility that you're not realizing what was exactly done that needed to be undone from the very first episode. They essentially downplayed the achievements of everything in the MCU before that point. It was all preordained. Nobody made a heroic decision. Nobody made a heroic sacrifice. The Infinity Stones and the Infinity Gauntlet are essentially worthless MacGuffins. They've got a whole drawer full of Infinity Stones. And it really, we invested years, over 20 movies to get to Avengers Endgame. And this season undid all of that, and it never fixed it by the end of it. I think that's a problem.
No, I think that is a problem. But we are getting a season 2, so we're gonna find out more. So I don't know. It's tough because having seen
but we got the answers, and the answers are that he was keeping the timeline in place, and everything that happened was preordained by the guy that was running it.
Well, maybe it's not so much that it was preordained. Maybe it's that he didn't these are things that decisions that he liked, so he didn't interfere with. Because
he allowed to happen.
I don't buy the idea that he's all powerful and that he can decide what the timeline actually is, that he is preordaining what people are going to do. I think that it's more likely that he is looking at the different possibilities and then choosing the one that he likes the best, and that's the one that he allows to come to fruition. Which I think
eliminates the heroic acts that happened before, because it's no longer Captain America or Tony Stark, Iron Man, or any of these characters acting in the moment and making a decision to be a hero. He allowed it to happen. If he didn't want it to happen, he would have pruned them out and they would have run it over again until he liked the result.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. With a season 2, I'm going to kind of let the story unfold, and hopefully they will address that. But I understand that you being disappointed that we didn't get to it at the end of this one, and maybe we won't. And if they don't address that, then I think that's a huge problem. But with a season 2 coming, I'm one of those people that you get a lot of reactionary things from fans. Like an episode will air or an issue will come out and a character will do something, and people will be like, well, that character would never do that. This is the greatest travesty that ever was. And then, 4 issues down the line, you kind of get an explanation, and sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it's awful. Sometimes it's not. But I think that you have to let the story unfold. A writer that's worth their salt, and we still don't know if that's going to be what the writer of this show turns out to if they're going to deliver a solid product. We don't know because we're not at the end of the story yet. But your hope is that they're not showing all their cards, that they have a plan, and that they've thought of all this and they've run it, by enough people who can spot the holes in what they're writing to point them out so that they can fill them in. That's always the hope. Will we get it? I don't know. I think it's weird for me to be the positive one and for you to be the cynic. I feel like roles are reversed, because usually with comics, you're like, there's still hope, and I'm like, nah, the industry's dead.
I'm down on the MCU. I'm not. I can't sugarcoat that one. Endgame felt like a capstone.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to come back from Endgame, especially with characters that aren't interesting. Shang-Chi has never been a very interesting character, and I don't see, they're building this huge multiversal threat in these other shows, and we're going to get Kang the Conqueror, we're going to get the Fantastic Four, which means we're going to get Doctor Doom, and then you look at Shang-Chi and you're like, well, what's this guy that knows Kung Fu going to do? And I'm likely to be invested in. I've never cared about the Eternals in comics, and I don't think I'm going to care about them in movies.
Well, and that's another, thing. We finally get to meet the villain. It probably would have been better to at least get a hint of him earlier on. And then when he finally unveils his plan, you're like, oh, I knew he was lying the whole time, kind of thing. It just kind of was sprung on you. That's why I think the architect, like I said, in Matrix Reloaded was so. Well, besides that scene just being completely boring and being
he was just saying to show you how many big words the Wachowskis knew. And vis-a-vis and what have you.
Yeah, this version was certainly more interesting. What else we get? We got Ravana. She was not held accountable for anything. She merely escaped.
Yeah, we didn't wrap that up at all.
No. I don't know. Did anything get wrapped up?
Not really. I mean, Loki admitted that he loves Sylvie, and they had a kiss, but that was still left open-ended by what her actions were immediately following that, pushing him through into another time sphere and then killing Kang. So, I mean, I thought that was interesting. I thought that her dogged determination, even in the face of what could be catastrophic, I thought was interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I liked the interplay between her and Loki. I liked the bit where he said, "You can't trust, and I can't be trusted." I thought that was a nice moment.
That line certainly stood out.
Yeah, ultimately it does. It's a show that's filled with interesting moments that don't really go anywhere yet.
Yeah, I think the pacing had a lot to do with it. It wasn't a well-paced show. There were fun moments, but it wasn't a fun show. It's kind of what you would expect of Loki. Like, Loki's mischievous, he's a liar, he's a this and that. It should be fun seeing him do all these things. And
if you're not getting that from the mainline Loki, you at least need to fill the show with other versions of him that do let Tom Hiddleston engage in that fun. Like, we got to see President Loki, but we got to see him so briefly He was fun in the moment that he was there, and I wanted more of it. Richard Grant's Loki was fun. I wanted more of it. The alligator Loki was fun. These are all things that I think the show should have leaned into more and have more confidence in. Is just kind of embracing the wackiness of the concept and the range that Tom Hiddleston can bring to this character, instead of trying to tell kind of a Doctor Who, what is essentially a Doctor Who story with a little bit of Hitchhiker's Guide thrown in.
Yeah, and the opening episode, you get to see Loki is essentially you responsible for bank robbery and all that stuff, and you're like, oh, we're gonna get to see him do some. How else did he affect history? And next thing you know, the only other places they went, essentially were in the future and other planets and stuff.
Yeah, and not very interesting planets. Because
how did he cause the fall of Rome? That's what I wanted to see. He was really Brutus, right?
Just messing up all these timelines. It's kind of an idea that we had pitched to Disney at one point for a Stitch comic book, which we were always like way more ambitious than you're going to be allowed to be in publishing. You have to be working on features and dealing with legal on a daily basis to do some of the things that we wanted to do. But we wanted to do a Stitch story where he's basically bouncing around through all of the different Disney universes and messing things up. And we thought that would have been really fun to see, because people love whenever Disney fans, whenever you go to the park or anything like that, if you've got a pin with Stitch and he's interacting with some other character from some other franchise, people eat that up. And it was like, yeah, that's a really fun idea, and we could do a lot of fun story things with that. And that's kind of what I wanted Loki to be, and that's not really what we're getting. And now with the looming threat of Kang and this idea that he's this horrific figure, I don't know that season 2 is gonna bring the fun, but I could be wrong.
Well, and we've got other MCU movies that are going to be happening in the meantime, and it feels like it's all leading up to what is it? Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness.
The only movie that's been announced besides the idea of a Fantastic Four film that I'm interested in.
You don't like Guardians anymore?
I say again?
You don't like Guardians anymore?
I feel like Guardians is so far off that I'm not even thinking about it.
Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, it feels like we're kind of leading up to that, and there are some hints in here when you're seeing what King is talking about, of like that Jonathan Hickman Incursion stuff that he was doing with Avengers, which would be a really big storyline. That would be like an Avengers level threat to put into an Avengers style movie. Although I don't imagine we're going to move into the Incursions where they start destroying and murdering trillions of people. That
seems a little dark for a movie franchise that still wants to maintain a certain amount of jokiness. I think that destroying whole realities is a little bit over the top. And also I wouldn't be excited about it because obviously Chadwick Boseman's gone. They have no plans to replace him as the Black Panther, and I don't care for the actor that they've apparently cast as Namor. So I don't know. I'm just not excited about the MCU going forward. I feel like Endgame wrapped it the way that I look back at Secret Wars and kind of feel like that wrapped the 616 Marvel Universe for me. There's lots of things that have come out since then, and there'll be lots of things from the MCU in the future, but I feel like it's all just a pale imitation of the things that we liked. These movies keep reminding me that the characters that I was invested in, Captain America and Iron Man, are gone. And now we're going to get a bunch of D and, E level characters like Shang-Chi. And they're going to try and pick up the mantle, and they're going to try and rebuild this universe. But, and you can get to the X-Men, you can get to the Fantastic Four, and I'm tangentially interested in those and to see what they do with them. But I also kind of am indifferent because they're not going to interact with Captain America and Iron Man and the characters and Thor and the characters that I care about. These actors are eventually going to move on. And I think this is what really happened with, for everybody who's complained about the direction that Marvel's taken since Disney purchased them. I think that whether it was a mandate or it was just something that editorial saw as the writing on the wall, is that the only thing that matters to Disney are the movies. So we need to change the Marvel universe so that we get rid of the legacy characters and bring new characters in, because obviously actors are going to age out of the roles, or they're just going to not want to continue to do it. So the comics need to reflect that so we can justify our worth. And, as an IP farm, by creating these new characters, but they've been woefully unable to create any new characters that have caught on. And part of the reason is because they've kind of forgotten, they've got a lot of writers who have either forgotten or don't know how to build interesting characters. They think that surface traits are what define people's interest in characters. I say it all the time. I didn't really get invested in Miles Morales as a character in the comics I got invested in him in Spider-Verse. Like, he was fine in the comics and I was okay with him, but I wasn't super interested in him. And it was Into the Spider-Verse that kind of hooked me in and made me, I mean, I don't know what it's like to be a young black teenager, but Miles pulled me in. I didn't need to identify with his skin color. I identified with his humanity. And that's what they gave him in Spider-Verse. And that's why I think it was so much superior to a lot of his portrayals in the comics, where he was a little bit mild and a little bit dull. So, that's really the crux of it, is you need to create characters that people are engaged in. And the characters that I was engaged in that were so powerful and that I had a nostalgic attachment to, but then the MCU also built up really well, are gone. So,
well, Thor is depressed fat Thor now, and even Hulk became like, pretentious, lame-ass Hulk.
Well, he became Mark Ruffalo, and nobody's interested in Mark Ruffalo.
Pretentious, lame-ass Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah.
So,
Chris Hemsworth, I mean, depressed fat Thor with PTSD. I mean, shit, for the first time ever, I felt represented in a superhero movie.
Oh, come on, Ghibli.
Ghibli's not depressed, and I'm not short.
all right.
I can't identify with a short person. What? The person has to be exactly like me.
So,
bearded, depressed.
So this is kind of the end of the first phase of at least the MCU on Disney Plus. We got WandaVision, we got Falcon Winter Soldier, we got Loki. How would you rank this out of the three?
I put it in the middle. Falcon and Winter Soldier being the worst, Loki being in the middle, and then WandaVision being at the top. And I think it was just because WandaVision did something different, something really different in its approach, and kind of entertained me that way, because I was like, at least they're trying new ideas. We can argue about how successful it was, but it still ends with a big fight in the sky, which is something that we kind of need to address with the Marvel movies, is that, you can't just fight a big CGI army at the end of every movie. It's gonna have diminishing returns. But they did try to do something different throughout the show and present it in a different way. And I did get a little bit bored with WandaVision, with the, each episode being a different era of sitcom. I was like, okay, I get it. I get the premise. But they started introducing the outside element early enough to where I was entertained. So I think that WandaVision, while not perfect, still ranks the top for me. Loki in the middle, and then Falcon and Winter Soldier is the absolute bottom.
And this is the end for MCU on Disney Plus this year, correct? I don't think there's any more series coming out, right?
We've got What If coming, I think, towards the end of the year.
Yeah, that's animated, right?
Yeah, but still, it's going to be the characters that you like. You're going to see different versions of Captain America and Iron Man and Black Panther, and the characters that you're already invested in. You're going to see them in new situations, voiced by the actors by and large. So I think that'll probably, and it's self-contained, so each episode might be more satisfying than the overarching story that doesn't pay off by the end, like this season of Loki.
Yeah, so we shall see what happens there. I guess the next big thing for Disney Plus is going to be, is it the Book of Boba Fett? Or is there something Star Wars before that?
No, I think What If comes out before Book of Boba Fett. I think Boba Fett's not until December.
Yeah, so I'd say that, I don't really watch cartoons unless it's with my kids, Aaron. I'm sorry.
They're not cartoons, Wes. They're
animated features. Come on.
Come on, man.
I watch so much Loco Nuts and
you'll read a comic book.
Leo Cookwood and
like it's just a motion comic.
I didn't like motion comics. Nobody did.
Not a motion comic, because those are largely garbage. But you know what I mean? It's a comic book. It's animated. It's fluid. It's moving. How can you read comic books and be like, I don't have any interest in watching cartoons?
Listen, I can only watch so many cartoons, and my 2-year-old and 6-year-old put it to the max.
Can I plug a cartoon for your kids that I just happened to randomly put on last night because
I put it on today,
and
the 2-year-old didn't love it. I think the 6-year-old would love it.
Oh, the one that I was talking about, Trash Truck.
Yeah, Trash Truck. I put it on. It didn't have music. That my 2-year-old's really into music. We've been watching The Wiggles lately.
Oh yeah, okay, so that speaks to your 2-year-old. But yeah, the 6-year-old might like it. I just thought I watched it and I was like, wow, this is just
the animation's fantastic. I was like blown away.
Yeah, I watched 3 episodes of it and I was like, this is just a sweet, like heartfelt show. And it's like I felt kind of I just felt some cynicism wash away, and I was like, oh yeah, this is what it was like when my heart was an open book.
So we'll plan on reviewing the Book of Boba Fett in December. If you have a show that you would like Aaron and I to review up here on the channel, that's not a cartoon. I watch enough cartoons, some live action. We will try and check it out and do some reviews on that. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait to the end of the year before Aaron and I disagree on another TV show where I'm too cynical and he's too optimistic.
we should meet somewhere in the middle.
We'll see what happens. I do appreciate the time, Aaron, and we'll be talking about toys and stuff. So you're going to have plenty of Aaron on the channel.
Thanks for joining us, guys. I hope put your comments in the comics or in the comments. I'm interested in what everybody thought, not only of this episode but just over the overall season.